Hey guys, and welcome to episode 79 of the Pixel Street Podcast, where every week we get together and talk about one of the things we love most, video games. I am your host for the week, John Hansen. Joel Campos had a heart attack from the announcement of the PlayStation 5 coming next holiday, so he's dead. But I am joined today by Connor Kopp. Connor, how's it going?
I'm good, but I'm a little weirded out. KFC has chicken wings now? Like proper Buffalo Wild Wings style chicken wings, and it's some
What?
I haven't stopped thinking about this. It's
What?
literally been they legitimately have wings. Yes.
Stop the podcast. We have to go.
So I've had them. Just a quick review for you.
Okay.
It's not like the regular chicken. They're really really small, but they're still bone wings. So they look like boneless. It's a very strange situation. They have buffalo sauce, honey barbecue, and Nashville hot. Oh, and you can get them unsauced too. And I just didn't expect to have wings at KFC, and it's really throwing me off, man.
You just blew my mind. First of all, why haven't they had that?
Yes, you're right. It makes sense, but at the same time, it doesn't make sense. I don't know, man. I'm just messed up about it. Let's talk video games.
Oh, we have to. All right. You can find the Pixel Street Podcast on most podcast platforms on Fridays, as well as on YouTube. You can now watch the show directly on our Facebook group by searching for Pixel Street Podcast. Also, be sure to follow us on Twitter at Pixel Street Pod, where when we reach 100 followers, we will be giving away a game. We are sitting right at 50. We are right at the midway point, so help us push forward for that, and we'll decide a game later on. Maybe we'll run a little poll and see what people want to do. But as for right now, this week we will be discussing the Blitzchung suspension from Hearthstone and the whole boycott Blizzard push, details about the PlayStation 5, and Mike Ybarra leaving the Xbox team. But first, let's get into any video games releasing in the next week that we're excited for. Connor, are there anything you looking forward to?
Yeah, I'm taking a look at it, and it's really not much. Man, Grid is coming back. I don't know if you saw that, so hopefully that's a solid racing game.
Killer Queen Black releases this Friday on the Switch and PC. Very excited about that.
Man, I might have to get... that's one that I totally forgot about. This one's still a little ways out at this point, but October 16th, so I guess next week from when we're recording, is Little Town Hero, that new IP from
that's next
Game
week.
Freak. Yeah, it's kind of slipping in under the radar.
Wow, yeah, I completely forgot about that.
Yeah.
That's definitely going to be interesting. Since I'm the big Overwatch guy, I also need to mention that next Tuesday, Overwatch comes to the Switch, as well as The Witcher 3, which might be the first time I actually play that game on the Switch, so I can have it on the go. Definitely excited to give that a try. I don't want to play this game, and it's going to be awful, I can already tell you, but Zombieland Double Tap Road Trip comes out next week.
Oh, man. That's one of those games that I feel like you kind of have to play just to know how bad it is.
Right, yeah. From the little bit I looked at it, it's like a twin-stick shooter.
Gross.
Yeah.
I hate those.
It's not going to be good. Shout out to Angry Bunny's Colossal Carrot Crusade that comes out on the Switch next Wednesday.
It's a banging ass name. I'm into it.
Right? I want to try it just for the name alone.
Heck yeah.
Yeah, I'm going to say that's about all we really have coming out in the next week. One thing I do want to mention, though, since it was pretty big news of video game release-wise, Doom Eternal was just delayed until March of next year. It originally was supposed to come out November 22nd, I believe, or 25th.
Something like that, yeah.
And now it's coming out March 22nd or 25th. I know I've got those mixed around, but it was supposed to come out in November. Now it's coming out in March, so that really... I was really thinking that was going to be my game of the year, so now I'm really stuck on... I have no idea what's going to be my game of the year this year, because in the past couple of years... I've had very specific games just jump out in front. Oh yeah, this is the game. Overwatch in 2016, Breath of the Wild in 2017, God of War in 2018. 2019 doesn't have that game for me that just completely captured me like those games have. I just started Resident Evil 2 and it's damn good, so maybe there's a chance that really does it. But
yeah, I mean, there's been some
right
solid
now.
games this year, but it really truly does feel like that gap year just before a new console launch.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah,
Which
it's
isn't
gonna be
bad.
a
Still
weird
plenty
argument.
of good games.
That's true.
So it is what it is. So let's get on to what we're playing right now. I'll start off. Right now, I am getting closer to beating Link's Awakening on the Switch. So I don't know if I mentioned this last week, but I've never beaten this game. I played it when I was a kid, but when I was little, Zelda games were a bit too much for me. I didn't really get a good grasp of them. It wasn't until the GameCube when I got the like Zelda pack that came with 1, 2, Ocarina of Time, and Majora's Mask that I really got into Zelda, and now it's one of my favorite series of all time, so much that I have a huge Link tattoo on my arm. I love Zelda. But Link's Awakening is awesome. I'm on the second to last dungeon right now, I think. I love it. It's so good. Our friend Josh was telling me the other day how he loved the game so much back in the day that he remembered everything and he beat the game in like 6 hours. So
Yep.
that's cool. Definitely gonna keep going into it. Maybe I'll try and grab all the hearts and 100% the game. But it's just an awesome game. Have you played it at all?
Yeah, I've played a little bit off and on. We picked up the Dreamer edition that came with the art book.
I did as well, yeah.
My fiance is mega into Zelda right now. She's not much of a gamer. She's never been huge into games. She's always kind of casually played like the Mario Bros and stuff like that. But when the Switch came out, I picked that up day one with Breath of the Wild, and she was so enamored with that game, just watching me play it, that she bought her own Switch, and that just kicked off the whole thing. Breath of the Wild was kind of her first experience, which that's a great first experience to have.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
That game's so freaking good. But she played that and was super stoked to see this one come out. And I did kind of warn her. I was like, it's pretty different. Like Breath of the Wild took a lot of drastic steps in a different direction. And you may not find yourself enjoying this one as much. But she picked it up and she's been playing it nonstop. She absolutely loves it. Playing it for the first time, it is a little bit more difficult for her because she doesn't remember or have the ability to remember all of this stuff and where it is. That game really doesn't hold your hand. So I've played a little bit on and off when she gets stuck on something. Maybe she's at a hard boss or can't quite figure out a dungeon or whatever the case may be. And she's asked me to jump in. And man, that game just feels and plays real good when it's not stuttering.
You see, yeah, I've heard people complain about this. Maybe I'm just not noticing as much, but I don't really have bad stuttering on mine.
I think that it's a very situational thing. Digital Foundry did a very deep dive into trying to figure out what the problem with that is, and they did some like weird downscaling, upscaling, all kinds of stuff to see if they could kind of nail down why that game had some performance issues, and they can't find anything out about that. It's just some kind of weird kind of glitch, or maybe something that they could patch out in the future. I know they haven't said anything about it at this time. But everybody seems to be having issues, so it's strange that you haven't seen too much.
Yeah, maybe it's just me being so...
well, John, the human eye can only see 24 frames per second.
No, yeah. Yeah, I just don't know. It runs fine to me. I'm also not... a game has to stutter really bad for me to really have a problem with it. Like Borderlands, like we were talking the other week, like that game has some really bad issues with it.
It's miserable.
But I just never feel like Link's Awakening has something like that in it. Like I don't notice, like the most enemies you have on a screen at a time is like 3, maybe 4.
Right.
I mean, maybe there's a little stutter when like you go to kill them and they blow up a little. I don't know.
I think specifically what I'd heard was that it seemed like, and again, I don't know 100% on this, but it seemed like a lot of it was tied to the fact that this game is actually open world, whereas the original and the remake, the original kind of deluxe edition, whatever you want to call it, they were kind of block or cube based, so you would go into a different room and it would load that room. And deload the last room, and then every time you change rooms,
it's loading the entire thing at once.
Right, exactly. And part of the problem with that is that it regenerates all the enemies and everything that you changed every time you go back and forth. So it's catching a little bit of stutter is what I've heard theorized, when you kind of go back to an area you've already visited, because it's basically rebuilding that whole area instead of just kind of having it there how you had it. It's because of that function that it's having some issues. So whatever the case may be, there are some issues with it. I think, like you said, though, it's not egregious, and even if it was, like, the game is still very, very good.
Mm-hmm. Also, let's give a quick shout out to just how good it looks. Like, they changed up the aesthetic and everything, so it kind of looks like a plastic toy look. One thing I love is the amiibo that came with it. I got it, and it like shines like a little plastic toy and everything. Brilliant job on it. Give me more Zelda. Just bring Ocarina of Time and Majora's Mask back. I'll buy it for the 10th time. I don't care.
Timeless classics, man. Those games can be played over and over again, and just endless hours of enjoyment can be had. I agree. Release them all again.
Yeah, for sure. All right, tell me about Shadowkeep.
Yeah, so I'm still playing Destiny 2 Shadowkeep expansion. I talked a little bit about it last week, and I'm a little further into it now. And I think it's still real good. I think it still holds up. It's got a lot of great things going on for it. The story is pretty short, like I mentioned, but they definitely have gone the way of kind of progressively adding story instead of just throwing everything at you at once. So, like, man, when did that come out? Was it the first that dropped?
Shadowkeep?
Yeah.
I
do believe it was the first. Yeah. So at this point, we're on reset week. So if you're unfamiliar with Destiny, every single week it has a reset, and I do believe that's on Monday or Tuesday, depending on your time zone. And with this week's reset, it actually added some more activities and more story and things to do in the game. So even though I had already beaten the main story, it was giving me more things to kind of chew on or go after. And that was really, really nice, because my issue with the game has always been that, you grind through all this story, you play all this story, which is generally very, very good, but then you're left kind of doing what they call chasing power. And you're going after stronger and stronger weapons, stronger armor, so on and so forth. You're doing endgame activities, but at that point you've done all of the story, so you're literally just rehashing and repeating the same stuff you did to kind of pick up new gear, which just makes the game feel very old very fast. And I think having this format where every single week, if that's the cadence that they're sticking to, kind of gives something fresh to chew on top of it. I think that'll go a long way in longevity for this game, as well as just overall tone and feel. I loaded into the tower after reset this week, and there was actually a new section being built in the tower, which is like mind-blowingly unheard of. There's just like little robots and stuff sitting around, like making all this steel construction, and I'm so stoked to see what it leads up to. I know it sounds kind of silly and funny, but just having that kind of progressive narrative, worked on throughout time is super, super cool. The guns feel real good. I did manage to get a whole bunch of new stuff to play with, and I think that the design differences and the things that they've changed in this so far have gone a long way into making this game feel a little bit less grindy and a little bit more like it's... man, I don't want to use the comparison because I feel like it's the wrong thing to say, but it feels a little more Diablo-esque, if you will, where it's just throwing things at you and you kind of have to dig the diamond out of the rough. Maybe Borderlands is a more apt comparison, where it's not being so stingy with its loot. It's kind of just giving you a ton of stuff, and with random rolls and everything, that stuff can be good, can be bad, but the rate at which you're getting stuff makes you feel like you're accomplishing something. It makes you feel like you're getting somewhere. So very, very much enjoying it. I think you should absolutely give it a shot with the new light stuff, at least, and just check out some of the changes they made, as I think they've gone a long way in just making that game feel better for newer or returning players that kind of fell off after a while.
Okay, yeah, Destiny 2, I only played the base game, but I enjoyed it much more than I enjoyed anything in Destiny 1. I'll probably at some point come back to it with the light increase and everything. It's just that thing that getting caught up is such a chore when you have friends that are way ahead of you. The new light upgrades and everything are awesome. That's what I did with the first Destiny. They had the like big boost for everyone coming in, and that really got me back into the game. So maybe I'll take a look at it. I've just got too many things I'm focusing on right now, but awesome to hear you're having a good time. You and our group of friends are playing it a lot, so that's like all you guys talk about. So that's awesome.
So true.
It's cool. Hey, I mean, I love Bungie. I'm glad to see them really when they first announced that they were leaving Activision and that they got to keep the Destiny license. I was excited for them, but I was also like cautiously optimistic because like you got to figure a lot of those bad decisions made were on Activision's end because they're just making bad decisions out the wazoo right now.
Absolutely.
But I just was nervous about Bungie like moving out on their own for the first time, because in the past they always had Apple or Microsoft or Activision. There was always that big guy there that take a big brunt of the decisions and everything. But so far I think they've knocked everything out of the park, and that's really awesome to see. How do you feel about the like recent announcement that they're gonna come out with a new IP within the next like 5 years?
I think 2023, and I'm glad you mentioned it because I was actually just about to bring it up. I don't think it's big enough to kind of chat about as a whole story, but it's some interesting stuff. You know, they've got this long thought out plan for Destiny. It makes you wonder, like, what's the scale of this other project they may be working on? Have they been working on it already? What is the situation there? And regardless of any of that, I'm excited to see what they do, especially with them being away from a major corporation, because this is the first time that Bungie's been independent. And gosh, they were bought by Microsoft in 99, 2000, probably late 2000.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, around then.
So, you figure at this point we're approaching 20 years of a company who very clearly has some strong pedigree, but has never been fully in control of their destiny, no pun intended. And I'm very excited to see what they do. I think that there's a lot of potential there. I think that they do good world building at the very least, and I'm excited.
Yeah, no, it's they definitely have they've always had a bright future, but it looks a lot brighter than it did, let's say, 6 months ago, where it was kind of murky waters. Shout out to Bungie, good job. All right, before I get to my next game, I just want to say that this game I streamed the other day, all month of October, we are doing spooky streams, so a bunch of Halloween-inspired streams. Last week, we played Dead by Daylight, the three of us and a friend. That was a lot of fun. Be sure to check out our Twitter at Pixel Street Pod, and also on Facebook to see when we're streaming. Tonight, me and Connor are planning on streaming some Halo, because it's Halloween.
That's right.
You didn't think that it was only horror games, did you?
We're all babies and we need a break.
Yeah, we do. But the game I was streaming the other day solo was Resident Evil 2. I mentioned that I just recently started this. I got about 2 hours in, I would say. Man, this game is really damn good. So I never played the original Resident Evil. When I was a kid, I tried playing the first Resident Evil, and the beginning moment scared the crap out of me. that moment where you're like walking into the room and there's a zombie and it turns around and it's blood dripping from its face and everything, that haunted me as a kid. So there was no way I was playing Resident Evil 2, and I just never got around to playing it. But yeah, this came out earlier this year, February, I think, or January, and it was pretty much all people were talking about for a bit until really Sekiro came out. And man, I can definitely see why this game is brilliant. It plays much more like Resident Evil 4, 5, and kind of 6. 5 I really enjoyed. I know people weren't crazy about it, taking a more action approach to it, but I loved it. This game is great. It's definitely got those jump scares. There were definitely plenty of moments in the stream that made me jump and freaked me out. Like how many times I'd knock down zombies and just be staring at it and be like, okay, are you dead for real this time? And they don't move for a while. Then I finally like take a step and then they're like grabbing my leg. I'm like, are you fucking kidding me? Definitely plenty of moments that made me scream and everything. Lots and lots of good stuff in there. I think it's a good game with good puzzles. A little lost at the point where I'm at right now. Don't know where I need to go. I hit a point where I found Claire, and then I had to go back to this guy that was dying in the police station, and now it doesn't tell me where to go next, so I'm just kind of wandering around, but whatever. Maybe I'll talk about this more a little next week, but so far, I really enjoy this game. Have you played it at all?
I played a little bit when it launched. I've got it both on PC and on Xbox, and I was playing on Xbox originally, but wanted to jump into the PC version, so I've kind of put it on hold for the time being. And it's, I agree. I think it plays very well. It does play a little bit like 5 and 6. I tell you what, though, that game does not hold your hand when it comes to kind of solving its mysteries and puzzles and stuff like that.
No, it doesn't at all.
It's very, very difficult. But overall, I think that the game accomplishes what it sets out to do very well, which is scare the living piss out of me.
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah, I haven't even gotten the Mr. X and the liquors yet. I'm just on regular zombies still, and they get me.
Good luck. It's gonna be a trip for you. I did tune into your stream a little bit and kind of interact with you in chat. And one thing that I will say every time I see that game is that the graphics are just mind-blowingly good, especially in the cutscenes. The cutscenes are just stupidly well rendered. It's really, really nice.
Yeah, for a guy that looks as 90s as he does with Leon Kennedy, like he's got the whole what's the actor's name? Big time actor. Leonardo DiCaprio. He looks so much like him, like 90s Leonardo and everything. He looks brilliant, man. It's awesome. Claire looks awesome. The environments are amazing. The effects when you shoot the zombies are outstanding. Like I love zombie games and everything. Just shooting them in the head and you see like the chunks of their face coming off and everything, and you shoot them in the arm and it goes flying, and such good stuff put into that. Really, really great job by Capcom. They're just kind of killing everything they do right now.
Yeah, I mean, especially with Monster Hunter, like they're just on such a high note at this point. I'm really excited to see what they do over the next couple of years.
Oh yeah, no, definitely great to see after, before the last couple of years. They were kind of in a low area, let's say, but they seem to have turned it around. All right, let's get on to the news. Connor, what do we got going on today?
Oh man, we've got just tons and tons of nonsense happening, so I guess we'll just jump right into it. This first one is kind of a conglomerate of multiple stories, so I'm going to be pulling from a few different stories here, and I apologize if I kind of take a second to read through these. But essentially, Blizzard made a big move over the weekend. They stripped a tournament winner for Hearthstone Grandmasters, which, if you're unfamiliar, Grandmasters is essentially their high-level league play, or competitive level play for Hearthstone, where there's tons and tons of prize winnings. And at this massive, massive tournament, they were touting all kinds of payouts and stuff, and they've been kind of hyping this up for quite some time. That tournament went through, and the player that won, his name is Blitzchung. That's his in-game handle. Blitzchung made a statement on stream, from my understanding, actually during an interview, just kind of referencing the situation in Hong Kong, and announcing his support for the people of Hong Kong. Just a quick teardown on that, and I don't want to get too far into it, but Hong Kong is essentially kind of in the middle of almost a civil revolution at this point, where the people feel that the government has grossly overstepped its boundaries. It's very reminiscent of the Tiananmen Square massacre back some 30, 40, 50 years ago at this point. And it's just got very bad feelings and vibes all around it. And the world's kind of looking in on this situation as an authoritarian China kind of cracks down on its civilians, and it's get to the point where they're planting fake protesters in with the crowds with guns, so that they can shoot and incite all kinds of violence, and the Chinese authorities can step in, and it's absolutely insane what's happening. So this player, his name is Chung Ninhua, again goes by the name Blitzchung, during an interview just said something to the amount of that he supported the people in Hong Kong, that he was standing with them, and the interviewers actually cut off immediately and either went to a break or transitioned to another segment. And the outlash on this has been absolutely insane. So at this point, Blizzard has taken action, and they said effective immediately, Blizzard has removed Hong Kong Hearthstone player Blitzchung from Hearthstone Grandmasters, rescinded all of his prize money, so all of his winnings they've taken back at this point. I don't know if they got to the point of paying them out. That seems to be relatively unclear. And they have suspended him from pro level play for 1 year, which isn't unheard of in this scene, but for something so small as just kind of
voicing his opinion.
Right. Just giving support to the people of Hong Kong who are very seriously going under some strife right now. Well, unfortunately, the story doesn't stop there. I do want to add that it seems like the interviewers, who were, I do believe, part of Chinese state media, actually got fired from their jobs as well, even though they weren't part of that statement. They never said anything. They just failed to cut him off in time, and so the Chinese government axed them as well, which is insane already. Well, continuing from here, just a bit of a lesson for you. So Blizzard is part owned by Chinese company Tencent. As of 2017, the company owned just about 5% of shares in Activision Blizzard. And this stuff is pretty normal for any company that wants to get into the Chinese market, is they have to have the blessing of Tencent, as well as the Chinese government, to get in there. You see stories pop up all the time about Chinese censorship for media, games getting over there and having all kinds of weird censorship, like no gore, no blood, or anything like that. And basically, there was also a story that popped up quite some time ago where I think it was Diablo. I do believe it was Diablo, actually. So this is another Blizzard story. They, in order to get one of their games into the Chinese market, had to remove all people of color from the game. And they did it. They did it, and it's just mind-boggling. So, knowing that information and knowing that large stake that they have there, and Tencent has some very, very close ties with the Chinese government, it's very easy to draw a line and be able to tell that this move was either pressured or brought on by that relationship with Tencent, and made to protect Blizzard interests in the Chinese region, simply, which is just insane. There's more to this that I'll get to in just a second, but moving up to this, John, I know you weren't super informed on this story. What are your thoughts so far?
So yeah, I haven't looked too hard into this lately. What I've seen is mostly everyone blowing up on Twitter. There's been this huge push with boycott Blizzard. Tons and tons of people are putting up screenshots of them canceling their subscription to WoW, uninstalling all of their games. There's a lot of talk about this. And let's also be clear here that this isn't all of Blizzard. Like, there's people inside the company that are not happy with all of this development
as with any
well.
Company. Absolutely.
Yeah.
There are parts of it that do not speak in this manner, that do not support this, that aren't a part of this. There is always a separation. This is specifically kind of targeted from the overheads of Blizzard in some way. So, sorry, just wanted to say.
For sure. So some employees have been covering up at the Blizzard HQ. They have all these symbols on the ground outside, and there's a couple spots that mean think globally and every voice matters. Like, the day after this happened, someone went over and covered them up with paper.
Yep.
Like, that that is such a brilliant way to just be like, hey, this ain't right. Like, you guys are going against the things you say you hold dear and everything. People are definitely very ashamed to be working with Blizzard at the moment, I think. Also, you were mentioning to me about how a Hearthstone caster quit in protest of all this.
Yep, that's Brian Keebler. He was a very popular Hearthstone caster, and it came out today, some hours ago at this point, so very, very fresh. He announced that he has quit, and he has linked him quitting directly as a protest piece for the Blizzard Hong Kong debacle, basically saying that Blizzard's incredibly harsh punishment of Grandmaster's competitor Blitzchung Ninghua was a result of his decision. He basically said he does not condone this. He doesn't understand why they would do this. And in a statement piece that he wrote, he says, "I certainly never expected that my position in the Hearthstone community would lead to me making a statement on sensitive topics regarding international relations. But I've always viewed my strange place as a public figure in gaming as an opportunity to try and make the world a better place in whatever way I can. So here we are." So people are standing up. They're absolutely coming out against this. To kind of clarify a little bit more on this too, Blizzard incited part of their contract with these Pro League players that basically says that they can, I'm going to find it here, 2019 Hearthstone Grandmasters official competition rules. So in this, it says, engaging in any act that in Blizzard's sole discretion brings you into public disrepute, offends a portion or group of the public, or otherwise damages Blizzard's image will result in removal from Grandmasters and reduction of the player's prize total to $0, in addition to other remedies which may be provided for under the handbook and Blizzard's website terms. So they have a little clause in here that they incited and said that that's their reason for doing so, but this is very clearly kind of a political statement and or gesture, even if they don't seem to intend it to be so. Mm-hmm. And people are really, really coming out on this. It's actually gotten to the point where U.S. senators have started weighing in on this. Have you heard about this?
No, but before we go to that real quick, I want to really go into the rules here. So it says, so Blizzard's sole discretion. That means, like, this is, if they decide that you said something that the public starts looking at Blizzard wrong, or if it offends a portion of the public, you're done, you're out, we get all your money.
Yep.
My thing with this is the only people it's offending, the only group it's offending is Tencent. Like,
in the Chinese government by extension.
Yeah, and in that, yeah, as well. So, yeah, this is looking awful on their end. Going to the punishment itself, it's incredibly harsh. Like, incredibly. Like, this was definitely a statement move. You do things like this to make sure that no one else does a thing like this. This is a move to try and keep other people quiet, because this is a lot of money. This is a lot of future money that he's going to lose out on. I'm sure he's a streamer and he gets enough money from there as well, but still, this is a lot of money that
I don't know if I said the dollar amount, but the winnings from this event was $500,000 US.
Yeah, so incredibly harsh, completely unwarranted in my opinion, and absolutely wrong. But go ahead and tell me more.
Yeah, just to add on to the end of that there, I've always kind of wrestled with this too, because obviously they are representing the pro face of these games and kind of the higher tier level of play, but at the same time, these people are very clearly human and have a right to stand up for what they believe in. Granted, this person isn't a U.S. citizen, but Blizzard as a U.S. company should be embodying this spirit and allowing people to kind of rally around what they believe in, of course, assuming it doesn't harm or bring harm to somebody else. And so it's just very, very strange. Anyway, the U.S. senators, so there was a few U.S. senators here. I'm pulling it up. that came forward, and let's see here. Oregon Senator Ron Wyden shared on Twitter, Blizzard shows it is willing to humiliate itself to please the Chinese Communist Party. No American company should censor calls for freedom to make a quick buck. And another one came out. Florida Senator Marco Rubio said, recognize what's happening here. People who don't live in China must either self-censor or face dismissal and suspensions. China using access to market as leverage to crush free speech globally. Implications of this will be felt long after everyone in U.S. politics today is gone. So this is really, really blowing up in the face of Blizzard, and I think that they were kind of hoping for this decision to just fly under the radar and people to not really say anything. But this has picked up steam very, very fast, and this is over... 3-4 days. I don't remember the specific day this happened.
It was the last few days. You're right.
So very, very recent.
I'm just looking up the boycott Blizzard stuff real quick, and for this going out a few days ago, like, this is still getting a ton of steam right now. Oh my gosh! So there's so many images of people are taking Mei from Overwatch and like really using her as a symbol for how they're using the Blizzard character as a way to be like, yo, even your own character wouldn't agree with this. Like, they've got so many things of her like changing up her clothes and saying free Hong Kong. Lots of stuff in here. There's an image of her in Snowball with her fist in the air saying liberate Hong Kong. Lots and lots of stuff with Mei in here. Lots and lots of people still showing screenshots that they're canceling their pre-order for Warcraft 3, canceling their subscriptions. This is a lot, and a lot of people taking the Blizzard logo and putting it on a communist flag. Man, there is so much in here. People are not happy about this.
As they should be. I mean,
100%.
You look at this, and this is just very clear de facto censorship at its core.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, for sure. Lots of people saying move away from Overwatch, go to Paladins and Team Fortress 2. So much stuff. So we don't usually do this. We usually keep this for the end, but I think with the roll we're on right now, we should bring this in. Our topic of the show this week was our thoughts on Blizzard, or I guess I should say Activision Blizzard as a company right now. And I think we should just really we should include this right now. We'll get to the other news here in a second, but I just think while we're on the roll here, we should really get into this. Connor, what are your personal thoughts on Activision Blizzard right now?
Activision Blizzard is obviously one of the largest media conglomerates at this point, as far as video games is concerned, in the US and some would say worldwide. That being said, Blizzard and Activision have shown time and time again that they are either incapable or don't understand the power of the influence that they hold is affecting everybody in the space. You know, when they make a decision on something, it's not just affecting a small chunk of gamers that can go, oh, well, I'll play something else. No, this is one of the companies that makes some of the biggest franchises in the entire world. And as such, I think that we should absolutely hold them to a higher standard. And when it comes to things like this is mind-blowing that somebody would even okay something like this. You figure this had to have come from perhaps the Chinese arm or the international marketing arm of the company, and I'm sure that somebody's going to get scapegoated here. But man, this is just, when you think about it, kind of following a string of not only strange behavior, but crappy behavior. You look at the Diablo stuff, and as dumb and silly as that was, it was a very not fan-centric decision. It was a very monetary-based decision, as mobile gamers spend more money on video games than console gamers do. You look at the Activision side of things, and they have said that they are getting rid of all of their other IPs. They are basically focusing only on Call of Duty, and that's all they're going to make. And they make problematic deals with companies like Sony to hold off things like that survival mode in Call of Duty Modern Warfare for a whole year, and then all the Destiny stuff. And you look at this, and to me, this just feels like a capstone at this point. I think that Blizzard Activision have made a lot of problematic decisions over the years, and this is kind of just the head of it. I think that at this point, people are absolutely right to be boycotting them, and I think that, the response from Blizzard and to a further extent Activision needs to be very transformative. Otherwise, man, I really will feel bad every time I see one of their games on the shelf, because I can't support this. This is insane to me that we've got to this level.
Yeah, there's just a complete lack. Activision Blizzard, the last, let's say, 3 or 4 years, maybe even a little longer, there's been a complete lack of understanding the public and really reading the room. Because, like we were mentioning earlier, Activision, which is part Blizzard now, like Blizzard isn't its own company, Activision isn't its own company, they're just one thing now. They are making so many bad moves everywhere they go right now. And I think they just have this opinion that because they have all the money, they have all of the biggest names in the world for titles, Call of Duty, they own King, all this stuff, Blizzard, they think that they can just get by on that. And it's really showing now that they can't. Like, they are making bonehead decisions. They're not choosing their fights properly. They have to have some kind of response to this. So far, there's been just radio silence on it. Here, actually, before I say anything else, let me just look up the Blizzard Twitter and everything, make sure. Okay, blah, blah, blah. Nothing here. Just talking about BlizzCon, which I really wonder how many people show up to that now. Because really, that's been going downhill anyway after the Diablo thing. Activision introducing Call of Duty League, Call of Duty Mobile. So yeah, they're just really trying to take the approach that if they just leave it alone, this will go away. And I really don't think it will right now. Like, this is gaining too much steam for them. This is another huge black eye for them. Like you said, last year, the Diablo Immortal. That's what it was, right? The phone game?
Yeah.
Okay, wow. I didn't realize how close those were. All right, Diablo Immortal, like that was bad, and that made them look bad and just really showed that they don't really know what their fans want and everything. But that's a much more lighthearted thing than this. Like, this goes beyond video games. This goes down to human rights. Really, your alliance with countries right now. Like, you're an American company and you're siding with Hong Kong on this, like, which is the whole communism versus capitalism thing has always been a huge debate in the world, and it just doesn't look good for them right now. And you gotta figure some changes have to be coming. You gotta think the board really looks at this kind of stuff and they're like, yo, we're losing a lot of money here. Because at the end of the day, that's all they care about is money. I mean, it sucks, but that's all they care about. And they've shown it time and time again. They only want your money. When you lose their money, well, that's when the changes start coming. I don't know if this is just a outspoken minority right now. It doesn't feel like it because there's so many, but there's always those people that aren't in tuned enough with news and everything. Like, they just jump on WoW because they love it. They don't really pay attention to the news of video games. People play Call of Duty because they just know Call of Duty is a huge game. I don't know yet if the response here is big enough. I really hope it is for a change to be made, whether that's by the head people looking over the PR stuff, because their PR is just awful right now. Everything they do is just met with bad vibes and everything. And it sucks, man. I love Blizzard. I love Activision to an extent. I don't love them for the practices they make. I love their games. Tony Hawk was awesome. Call of Duty, I used to be super into. They have some of the best games ever made in their lineup. And it's just mind-boggling to me how you are one of the top companies in the video game industry. Everyone knows your name that pays attention to this stuff. And you pull this kind of move. Such a, like I was saying earlier, such a harsh move. Like, taking all that money away. You're banned for a year. Firing the guys that had nothing to do with it. They were just there. They were at the wrong place at the wrong time. And it's just so much here to unravel. That's just bad stuff coming from this.
Yeah, it just doesn't feel good, no matter what way you cut it. You know, it's a very dicey situation, and like you said, you know, the people at Blizzard on the lower rungs, the people that are there, clock in, clock out, do their time, and produce some of the best video games on the market, you know, that really take pride in their work. I feel very poorly for them as well, because this is so disrespectful to the level of work and appreciation they have for the place they have in the industry. You know, I understand that not everybody may feel that way, but when you come down to it, I'm sure there are a lot of fantastic people at that corporation that feel just as bad as we do about this, and they have to be scratching their heads and wondering, how do I cope with this? How do I secure my paycheck and my well-being while at the same time knowing that this isn't okay and I don't support it, you know? And I think that's one of the worst parts of this situation. Few last things that I want to touch on, and then we can move on from this story. Jason Schreier is actually on paternity leave, from my understanding. Very, very famous editor at Kotaku. He has come out and said that just a few things here. Blizzard is planning a lot of big announcements this year at BlizzCon to kind of make up for the PR debacle of last year that they had happen, where essentially they had nothing. There was the whole Diablo thing. There was all the other little stuff that kind of added up into it. And I think it's very interesting to think about that now, because, you know, what does a BlizzCon look like after a situation like this, right, where almost everybody has turned on them at this point? You know, like you said, there are definitely the loyalists that don't follow the news, that don't understand, that just are happy to turn on their computer and play WoW for hours and hours a day, and nothing will change there. But I really do hope the response from the crowd this year is just very poor until we get some answers. And on that note, Jason Schreier also said that he asked a few Blizzard staff about this, and one of their explanations was that the company's thinking in this situation was that they can't let anyone hijack a broadcast with their name attached to it for any political message. So it's kind of a zero tolerance policy, if you will, which is a little more understandable.
Yeah. From that end, I understand it, but...
Right. It doesn't make it feel better.
No, it doesn't.
But it does make sense. I think that one of the biggest problems with this whole situation, and I'll kind of close on this, is that there has been no communication whatsoever after the announcement of this. There's been no explanation. There's been no, this is why we did this. This is our belief as a company, and this is why we took this action, even though we stand with the people of Hong Kong, or whatever the case may be. Of course, with their relationship with Tencent and the Chinese government and all that, I'm sure those words wouldn't come from them. But the radio silence from them has been almost doing the opposite of what I think they hope the effect was, in hoping it would just blow over or people would kind of forget about it. It kind of speaks volumes that they kind of just are dictated by the dollar, and that's all they care about at this point. And it's very unfortunate. It's very telling. And, I guess at this point we just wait to see what the response is.
Yeah. The BlizzCon is seriously just a few weeks away right now. Like, this is after the reception they had last year with the crowd booing and everything. If anyone shows up this year, which, I mean, of course, people will show up, but still, like, the people that do show up, you gotta wonder how the fan reception is gonna be there, even with big announcements. Like, do the, like, big names come out and they get booed off the stage or something? Like this is... It gets to a point where I kind of start getting worried about BlizzCon because I don't want anything dangerous to happen.
Right.
But this kind of fan outlash is big enough that I'm kind of worried something bad might happen. I hope not. I hope I'm very wrong. But it's got me a little worried. Before we move on here, just BlizzCon, what do you think happens? Like, do people show up? Do they boo them off the stage? Like, what do you think happens?
Man, I think it's real tough to call it. At this point, you have to consider that I'm sure there is a vast majority that just don't care, mm-hmm. and are unaffected by this. And the question really comes down to the people that do, and the people that will speak up and do something about this. And I think those are the people that, you mentioned people not showing. I think quite the opposite will happen. I think, if anything, more people will show. And those people, I foresee Blitzchung signs. Exactly. I foresee signs. I see potentially protests, and, maybe Blizzard just takes another zero tolerance policy and kicks them all out and removes them for disruption or whatever the case may be. Or maybe that crowd is loud enough. What I would like to see happen is BlizzCon shut down and just not do it this year, in hopes that they can kind of take the time to rethink themselves. But I don't see it happening, and
they've put too much money into it already.
Right, exactly. And when you talk about this company that's so beholden by the dollar, I foresee this just being a very tone-deaf, business as usual kind of show.
I mean, that's Activision Blizzard over the last few years anyway, in a nutshell. Just tone deaf.
Yep.
And it is. We gotta move on, but we could
Let's talk about some better stuff.
We're gonna get on to some more exciting things. Yesterday, the Sony Interactive Entertainment president and CEO, the guy that took over for Sean Layden, I think his name's Jim Ryan.
Yes.
He came out and right after a exclusive interview with Wired between him and Mark Cerny, the guy that developed, or he was like the head developer on the PS4, he's the head developer on the PS5. They have come out, they've told us, hey, confirmed, we can call the new PlayStation console the PlayStation 5, and it's coming out next holiday 2020. Nothing surprising there at all, but they also went into some of the details of the console and the controller. So the DualShock 5 is getting rid of its rumble feature completely. So the rumble feature that you've known in like every console since, I think it started with the N64 and the PS1, that's gone, and they are using a thing they call, oh man, I lost my
haptic triggers, I do believe.
Haptic, no, it's not haptic feedback. That's it. So this will change depending on what is happening in your game. The example they used was, if you crash a car into a wall, it's going to feel different than when you get tackled on a football field. So whatever rumble or vibration, whatever they have set up in there is going to change depending on what you are doing in the game. They also mentioned how, like, walking through a field, you'll feel like the grass and everything. I don't know about that. This is like, I'm guessing it's some kind of thing close to HD rumble in the Switch, which is really cool. It's like rumble, but just turned up to 11. Like, it changes. You can, like, feel, like, in the Switch, there's Mario Party games where you're, like, holding up a box and you're, like, shaking it around and you can tell that there's 2 or 3 things in there. It's kind of hard to describe unless you actually feel it yourself. I think that's what Sony is going for here. If they pull it off, awesome. It's cool. What I think is more interesting, though, is the new triggers on the DualShock 5. So these things are, everything you're doing with the triggers and the sticks is going to feel different. What I mean is, when you go to pull back an arrow, when you're shooting a bow and arrow, you can actually feel the tension on the line as you pull it back. When you're shooting an assault rifle compared to a shotgun, it's going to feel different depending on which one you are holding. Depending on where you're walking in the field, say you're in a muddy area, it's going to feel very slow and sloshy, where when you're on ice, your sticks are going to feel a little more free and you're going to be slipping around. When you're in water, you're going to feel the tension from the water as you're swimming through. Lots of cool stuff in here. Apparently, they just gave the prototype for this controller out to developers. The PS5 dev kit has been out for a bit now, but they're just now getting able to play with the new controller. Seems like a cool idea. There was also talk about there's a hole in the controller now, which might be like a microphone or something. It's got a bigger battery than the PS4. It's going to be a little heavier than the DualShock 4. It's also going to use a USB Type-C connector to charge it and play through it and everything. I hope they get rid of that touchpad thing. I never was a fan of that, but we'll see. There wasn't any talk about that. So the controller has some new stuff. Before we move on to the other PS5 stuff, what do you think of all that stuff?
Yeah, I think it's interesting. One of the things to consider, though, for this is that a lot of people may not be aware, but that haptic feedback has been present in the Xbox One controller since day one. The difference is that developers have never really known how to handle it outside of Forza. It seems to be kind of the team at Turn 10 seems to be kind of one of the only people, and of course they've got a very close relationship with Microsoft, but they seem to be one of the only studios actually making use of it. So when you were, let's say, e-braking around a corner to bring yourself into a drift, and as you kind of feather the gas, you could feel the feedback of the different terrain that you bounce over, or when you have grip versus no grip, and your car's kind of sliding, or bumps, or whatever the case may be, in the triggers. I think the key difference here, though, is that Microsoft always positioned it as a enhancement to Rumble, so it was in addition to, never thought of to be a replacement of. And so for Sony to potentially be taking that path, it's a very much more like forcing developers to go after this and to adopt this technology, which I think may be a good way to go if you are looking to spend money on this and try to have this. But I'm a little worried that developers just aren't going to care enough to implement these types of features in it. We see a lot of these beginning of cycle features pop up that never really kind of turn into something larger, much like the touchpad that you mentioned. I mean, outside of the first 20, 30 games that launched on there's really not very many games at all that use that touchpad on the DualShock. And I agree, I hate the thing. I think any kind of implementation with that is a nightmare. But, it's still very early, and that's important to remember with this kind of stuff. Either way, though, I think it's nice to see them kind of take some risks, as Sony's been a company classically that just wants to stay the same. And, they're very much if it ain't broke, don't fix it kind of attitude. So we'll see.
Okay. All right. So moving on from the controller, the console itself, Mark Cerny made sure to make sure that he mentioned that the ray tracing in the game or in the console is actually GPU based. It's not software based. Solid state drive. So he explained kind of what that means for the people that don't really know. It's going to replace the hard drive. It's going to load things up a lot faster. It's going to it leaves a little bit of flexibility for the developers. If they want to, they can make bigger, more detailed worlds, but if they also want to, they can make the file sizes of their games and patches smaller, which has like been a big thing this current generation. There was also talk about UI getting an update on the PS5 where you don't have to go into a game to join other people. You can just see what they're doing from the home screen and do it right there. Also, one thing that I thought was really cool that was mentioned is installing and uninstalling games is going to be very, I guess you could call it customizable.
Sort of piecemeal.
Yeah. So you can choose what parts of a game you want to install and what parts you don't want installed. Say you're playing Call of Duty Modern Warfare and you only want to play the campaign at first. You can install just that part. When you're done with it and you want to move on to multiplayer, you can install just the multiplayer and then delete the campaign to save up some space. So that's really cool. I'm excited.
I think it's
to see more
important
of
to
that.
mention on that, though, just to touch on it, that, again, this is a feature that Sony has implemented as an accessibility or option for developers, and in no way means that this is going to be available for all games. So it's still up to the developer what to include. And I hate to dredge it back up, but Xbox did announce something very similar to this a few E3s ago, and it just never caught fire. I don't know if it was poor developer adoption or whatever the case may be. I hope that it catches some traction here, but it is, again, something that has been tried and just never caught on.
Oh, yeah. No, personally, I think with Project Scarlet and the PS5, when both systems come out, I think they're going to be very similar in a lot of ways.
I agree.
Especially since, like with the streaming stuff, Sony and Microsoft are working together on this kind of stuff. So I think we're going to see a lot of similar things between the two consoles, but we'll see exactly what works, what doesn't. Like, you look at the PS4 and the Xbox One announcements, there's so many things that aren't there for both consoles right now and so many things that have changed. This is kind of stuff that you say to get people excited for the next generation, even though they did it in a weird way. I think they have been so weird about their announcements and everything, like only going through the Wired articles. They're not actually showing us anything. Like, we've seen a leak patent of what the PS5 could potentially look like, and it's got like a V pattern to it, but we don't know if it's real. We don't know if that's just the dev kit or what's going on here. There's a lot of questions surrounding this stuff still, but I think they're taking some very calculated announcements right now, and I think it's good stuff to announce on right now. There's still definitely a lot that they need to talk about, but I think the beginning stuff here is pretty good.
Yeah, I think it's it's good first bite, though I will say that it is at an odd time, especially to confirm that it launches next holiday and to be giving details now over a year in advance. It's a very strange thing, especially when you look back to Xbox having some woes and issues with the Xbox One X launch, where they talked about things over a year ahead of time there, and they had a very poor experience with that, and they actually came out and said that they would be kind of dialing it back and waiting for a smaller window, because things change, things are iterated on over time, and it's just a little odd to see Sony taking a different approach to this. A lot of weird stuff. I mean, you can talk about it for hours and kind of dive into it, but at the heart of it, like you said, it's a lot of cool news. It's great to know that next year is when we're going to be getting both next-gen consoles. One of the big questions, though, that remains, obviously, is pricing. This is something I've been thinking a ton about, taking it into consideration, and I have a couple good guesses, but I'm curious to hear what your thoughts are, if you don't mind sharing them.
On pricing?
Yes.
Oh, man. I think we've talked before about the whole Trump tariff things and how that's going to raise prices. So, just looking at the PS4, that and the Pro released at $400. I think even without the tariffs, this release is at least $500. With the tariffs, I have no idea what kind of impact that has on how much higher it goes.
I think the proposed tariff is somewhere in the neighborhood of 25 to 30%.
Oh, jeez.
So the calculation made by some economist was, in a product like this, you're looking at probably about $100 price increase.
Okay, so 600. Yeah, I'd say 600 for the PS5. Of course, we haven't seen everything on all this, but I mean, it's got a 4K Blu-ray player in it now. It supports 8K. It's got all this stuff. Supports VR. I think this is looking 600 to 700.
No, I agree. I think that sitting up at the higher end of the scale is where we're going to be looking for this, tariffs aside, and those are still at this point unconfirmed. We don't know if those are going to go through or not. There's a lot of kind of strife and whatnot in U.S. politics. But the important thing to note here is that in years past, while consoles always adopted new technology and brought new things on board, they were never this level of cutting edge. You have things like ray tracing that have just hit the consumer market over the past year and a half, and are still very much not adopted all the way around the board. So I think you're absolutely right. I think personally, my prediction for both is launching at 500 at the very least.
Yeah, it's just that consoles that are okay. We should say Xbox and PlayStation, because Nintendo hasn't done this. They are making such a big push towards becoming more of a PC now, and with that, you're going to be paying more. Plus add on all the tariffs and everything. So I think they're going to be quite expensive here. But we will see. I don't think we get any more news on either console until February or March. I think that sounds about a good time for them to actually talk more about this stuff.
Yeah, I agree. Sony actually did the PS4 reveal February 20th. Of the year that it launched. So yeah, I think you're right on the nose.
Yeah,
there.
February, March sounds good. We're running a little bit long here, so our next and last news story we're not going to spend a ton of time on, but Mike Ybarra, who's the Xbox corporate vice president, has announced that he is leaving Microsoft. On his Twitter, he wrote, "After 20 years at Microsoft, it's time for my next adventure. It's been a great ride at Xbox and the future is bright. Thanks to everyone at Team Xbox. I'm incredibly proud of what we've accomplished and I wish you the best." So this guy has had a big say on a lot of things Xbox over the last couple decades. He promised to share news of his next venture soon, only revealing that he was super excited about his future endeavors. Most importantly, Ybarra concluded, "I want to thank all of you fellow gamers and our great fans for all the support. Keep gaming, and I hope to see you online soon." In response, Phil Spencer wrote, "Thank you for your many contributions to Microsoft and Xbox. You've been a strong advocate for our fans from day one and have consistently driven to keep gamers at the center of everything we do. All of us at Team Xbox wish you the best." Connor, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, Mike was a huge part of Xbox for a very long time. Especially under Phil Spencer's regime, and I think it's important to note that he was responsible, at least in massive part, as the head of Xbox Live, Xbox Game Pass, and Mixer. So
yes,
he's been a very instrumental part in Xbox kind of turning themselves around and becoming the company that they are today. So it's painful to see him go. As I think a lot of the things he did for the company were fantastic, but I'm excited to see where he ends up. And regardless, Xbox is on such an awesome path at this point. I think will be okay regardless. So
Oh yeah,
best
very
of luck
exciting
to him.
stuff. Thanks for everything, Mike Ybarra. Best of luck to you in the future. But that concludes episode 79 of the Pixel Street podcast. Connor, where can the beautiful people find you?
Beautiful people can find me on Twitter at The Real Birch. That's Birch with no I, so that's The Real BRCH. Also on Mixer under Birch BRCH. Come join us. We're going to be doing some of those Halloween streams
Tonight.
as I'm a baby when it comes to scary games. So, yeah.
Yeah, be sure to check out when we're playing that tonight. Or I guess it doesn't really matter because this is coming out after we stream.
It's true. So like 2 nights ago.
So 2 nights ago, check out the VOD.
Just pretend it was live.
Yeah, just pretend. But be sure to keep an eye out for all of our future streams and everything. Follow us for a chance to get into our drawing for a free game in the future. I am John Hansen. You can find me on Twitter at RevXShadows. You can also search for me on YouTube, RevXShadows, or go to youtube.com/JohnJW92. I've got a bunch of articles coming out. I recently just did a piece on Xbox Enthusiasts talking about the biggest Game Pass games you can play right now. I've got a big piece on the PS5, everything we know about it so far, so you can check that out coming up on Club Penguin Hero. And I am currently working on a piece for GamePer.com about the best Pokemon mechanics over the last couple decades, so be sure to check out for that. Thank you so much for listening, guys. Stay beautiful. We'll see you later.
Bye.